In this video, I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide for how you can approach any injury that you've experienced in sport or in the weight room or anywhere else, anything that is affecting your quality of life. I'm going to talk you through some of the injuries and difficulties that I've experienced, what I've learned through personal experience and through my research, and how you can take that away to have a game plan for how to deal with any specific injuries or pains or joint issues that you may be dealing with today. So first, I just want to talk to you about kind of my experience with injuries and with training and how I've really come to be where I am today and come to learn what I know now. So I grew up playing a lot of sports. I played basketball in high school, and my senior year, I really wanted to dunk. I had grown to be about 6'1", 6'2", not super athletic, but I could jump somewhat high, and so I was really devoted to wanting to learn how to dunk. But I wasn't really training in the weight room consistently, and I was on this retreat, and I really wanted to dunk while I was at this retreat. So on this one day, I had to have jumped hundreds and hundreds of times. On top of that, I was wearing shoes that were not ideal for that, really elevated heel, put a lot of stress on my knee, and it wasn't like, it didn't happen in one jump, but over time I could just feel it, like it felt like my knees were like tearing apart, but I just kept pushing through the pain because I really wanted to dunk, and that really affected my knee health, the trajectory of my knee health for the past 3 or so years. So I was suffering with what some people call jumper's knee, patellofemoral syndrome, whatever you want to call it, but essentially dealing with a lot of pain in the patellar tendon, first in the left knee, but then ended up happening in both knees because the way that I responded to that injury was just not the right thing. I basically did what a lot of doctors would say would just be to rest. I rested first I actually played through my injury for months because it was my senior year. I wanted to finish out my seasons, played through the pain in basketball, and then played through the pain in soccer. But after that, I just rested for like 3 months, didn't train my legs at all. And that was really bad because my knees went from being able to take a lot of load to being injured and then decreasing their ability to handle load to my extremely sedentary lifestyle. So basically the load tolerance of my knees had completely plummeted. So now when I would go try to go play sports, they would flare up every time I would try to play. So that created this cycle of experiencing pain when I play sports, resting for a while, experiencing pain while I play sports, resting for a while. And I'm sure that for a lot of you, you may be experiencing the same thing, whether that's in sport or whether that's in the weight room. And so I know that for me personally, that was a really difficult thing and something that I can still be dealing with a little bit now. But I've come a long way, and I wanted to share with you some of the things that I know for how you can tackle injuries like that. Not necessarily traumatic injuries, but kind of those chronic injuries that can develop and just be a nagging thing for a long time. So, one of the biggest sources of information I've really been taking from recently is Dr. Aaron Horschig from Squat University. I read his book, Rebuilding Milo, which was super helpful for me. Just to kind of understand the nature of how injuries and how pain in joints can happen, especially over a long period of time. Basically, he lays out this model called the kinesiopathological model, which shows what things can be happening in your body that can affect joints in other locations of your body. So doctors tend to really focus on the symptoms of what's going on. So you have knee pain in the patella tendon, let's fix your patella tendon. But in some cases, there can be issues that are going on throughout the rest of the body that are accentuating the pain or creating the pain. So in his book, he really lays out a lot of principles that are really helpful for how to tackle injuries like that. So a lot of these principles apply to a lot of the joints in your body, but let's just take the knee for example when we think about this. So I could be experiencing pain in the front of my knee, the back of my knee, the side of my knee, wherever, but the most important things that I need to look at are the load tolerance of the knee itself. Does my knee experience more pain when I jump on one leg as opposed to two? If so, that could be a sign of load tolerance. The ability of these tendons and these ligaments to take load upon themselves. But outside of that, what are the other things that can cause pain? There could be a lack of stability or a lack of mobility, both in the joint where you're experiencing pain, but also in joints above and below that joint that experience pain. So the knee is a really good example that, sure, you could be experiencing pain in your knee, but it could be that you really have unstable hips, which cause your knee to track in when you squat or when you land from a jump, causing knee valgus and causing a lot of load on that knee. Or it could be you have really limited ankle mobility, which makes your landings really wonky and sends a lot of load up through the knee. So you see how what we once thought was, okay, let's put painkillers in the knee right here to let's fix all the joints, all the points of the chain up the body, how that can completely change the way that you approach injury prevention and rehabilitation. So So for you, if you're experiencing any sort of pain in your joints, figure out some tests to be able to figure out, is this an issue with the load that the joint is able to handle? Usually the knees are a really good example of that. It could be in other joints. Is it because this joint can't handle this load, or is it a mobility or stability issue? So you can find tests both in Aaron Horschig's book or just in other places to test things like hip internal and external rotation mobility, or ankle mobility, or hip stability with a single leg squat, things like that, to really give you a overall picture of what your body is doing and how that affects other parts of your body. So as a whole, instead of looking at the symptom itself and looking at the location of the pain and trying to fix that, look to your body as a whole and see what are the weak links and see how you can fix those. And for a lot of people, you'll see that your pain actually goes away, especially for those non-traumatic injuries. Now let me take you through some of the main principles that I have used when trying to fix the pain that I've experienced in my knees or in my shoulders or in my hips or other places like that. Some of the most important principles that I've tried to adhere to are balance across the body, both in mobility and stability and strength, and also building resiliency of the joints. So for me, I have found that there were some hip stability issues and some hip mobility issues with my knees, but at the core, the biggest issue is just the load tolerance of my knee. So a lot of times the pain in my knee will flare up when I try to dunk on a one leg jump. So I can play football or soccer or even basketball full speed and be fine, but as soon as I try that jump to dunk full effort off of one leg, it can flare up, and it flares up pretty often. The reason being is that I haven't fully built up the load tolerance of my knee. And so the way that I do that is there's a lot of exercises that I use, a lot of which from the Knees Over Toes guy, who's got a lot of great stuff to say, not necessarily because his because his exercises are like better than other people's, but the principles that he adheres to, which is building resiliency through deep ranges of motion, is really, really important. So rather than shying away from putting great loads on the knee, I work up to putting big loads on the knee. So what people once thought was terrible, which was to put your knee over the toe, I do a regressed movement where it doesn't create pain, and over time I get to the point where I can do sissy squats or put my knees super far over my toes with weight without any pain. And when that doesn't create a single bit of pain, a dunk off of one leg isn't going to create any pain either, because that joint has become so resilient under great loads. So that applies for a lot of other joints as well. It could apply for your ankles or your hips or your shoulders. But as a whole, building a resiliency through a great range of motion is going to be the biggest tool to use, especially if you're dealing with load tolerance. But if you're looking at stability or mobility issues, those can pretty simply be fixed with resistance band work or single leg work or whatever it may be for your specific issues. And mobility, there's stretches you could do, or mobilization exercises, things like that. Those are usually the ones that are a little bit easier to fix, but load intolerance can be a lot longer term. So just be consistent. You definitely don't want to be training through pain. A little bit of pain is okay, because you want your joint to be adapting to a load that it can't handle currently. But if you create too much pain, it's going to regress and not be able to handle as much load as it would. So hope this was helpful. Hope it gave you some insight on how to tackle whatever injury you may be dealing with. If you have any more questions, feel free to shoot me a DM at Molcliffs, or to comment below any questions you may have. Check out some of the other videos on my channel that I have about other fitness related topics. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one.